Good morning, everybody. It's Max. How are you doing out there? I got a good one for you guys today. This is called Million Dollar Baby 2025 edition. So the premise of this video is that you have a $1 million account and you don't want to lose your millionaire status. So a person that has $1 million in SPY today had about 700,000 2 years ago. That's a lot of money to make in 2 years. Losing money in the stock market is now somewhat optional. When I was younger, in my 20s and 30s, I saw Mark Cuban make a life-changing amount of money selling his company to Yahoo, but he did it right at the top of the dot-com bubble, and everyone knew the dot-com bubble was going to crash. Everyone called that for like 2 years. It's the only problem. Everyone was thought it was going to happen in 99, thought it was going to happen in 2000. It finally did later. But people were wrong for 98, 99, and early 2000. But still, though, if you have a life-changing amount of money and the market's going to crash, and the way they structured the deal with Yahoo, he was locked into the shares. He couldn't sell the shares for some amount of time, a year, 2 years or something, 6 months, whatever it was. And he was nervous about it. So his brokers, what they did is they did a couple things, but they ended up putting a collar on Yahoo. And that's a collar is like a covered call transaction. It's where you already own the stock and you sell calls to bring in an income. But a collar is that, but part of the income that you bring in when you sell the calls, you use to buy downside puts as a hedge. So it's a covered call with limited downside is what a collar is. And wherever you put the put set, you can cut off the downside. You can even pretty much cut off the downside to zero. You can buy stock and make it where you don't lose money, where you don't have a chance of losing money sometimes with these types of trades. Or if you have stock, you can sell calls, sell part of your upside to finance puts, and you can put a floor, the lowest price that you would take for your Yahoo. Well, in any event, the market did finally crash, and there's plenty of videos of Cuban talking about this trade out there on the internet. And no, his brokers saved his fortune, absolutely. So the most common thing to do at the time would have been to diversify. He had some good brokers down there in Dallas, but the common wisdom at the time would have been his brokers would have just tried to put him in a bunch of different stocks. Of course, he couldn't do that because he was locked into the Yahoo. So the collar was a really good situation. So the thing is, in the old days, you had to be a professional to get into a trade like that for a variety of reasons. There wasn't enough liquidity. There wasn't enough strikes. People didn't understand how to do it. I mean, for a number of reasons. Not to mention, commissions were very high. Now, they worked with Cuban on the commissions, okay, but they wouldn't work with somebody like me on the commissions, or somebody like you. All right. So today's scenario is the market's up 40% in the last 2 years. You used to have 700,000 or 800,000, but now, thanks to Trump beating Kamala, your portfolio's been doing great. But you don't want to lose your millionaire status. And it's not just thanks to that. I mean, your portfolio's been doing great the past couple of years, right? You're up from 700,000 or 800,000 to more than $1 million. You don't want to lose your millionaire status, right? I showed somebody how to do this very similar type thing yesterday who has $4 million, but they're nervous about the market. They're nervous about the market dropping next year. They don't want their 4 million to turn into 3 million. Whatever the case is, we can fix this. Okay. So the thing about this $1 million baby is I haven't cut off all the upside. It doesn't have totally capped upside the way this is constructed. You still get partial upside. So in this trade, you can make money, but you can't lose money. So just like Mark Cuban, if you can never get that first million or 2 million or whatever you need to be comfortable in your mind, 3 million, 4 million, whatever it is that you need to take care of your family, when you get there, you can start using callers, and you don't ever have to worry about losing. All right. You may not be as comfortable as Cuban, but I mean, all right. So here's the $1 million baby strategy for 2025. A friend of the show suggested this trade, and it was $1 million worth of SPY, 1,700 shares. Okay. And then what it was, it's a half covered call. We aren't going to sell covered calls on the whole portfolio. We'd sell 9 covered calls. Covered calls are worth 100 shares. So that means 900 of the shares we would essentially sell through covered calls. And that would bring in an income. And then we would turn around and buy 17 puts. So the 17 puts would lock out the downside for 1,700 shares. Okay. Wherever you put the strike. Now, the problem is puts are expensive, but of course, the friend of the show suggested overriding the calls, and the calls finance the puts. You could actually do this trade for a little credit. So let's look and see what this trade is. This is a really cool trade. And I will share both trades with you guys. All right, here it is. So this goes out for a whole year. This doesn't expire until basically a year from a few days ago, a year from last week. Okay, so it protects you for a whole nother year, an entire another year. And this includes the stock. Here's your 1,700 shares of stock. The worst you can do on the year is be down 9,000. No matter what, if the stock market's down 16%, this is your entire retirement portfolio. It's down 9,000. So you're still a millionaire. Okay. But if the market should go up, let's say the market's up 10%, which is kind of an average year. Your $1 million portfolio ought to be up 100,000. But if you do this strategy, because you've locked out all the downside, you aren't going to get quite as much upside, but it's unlimited. You still get upside. You get about half the upside. You are up about 47,000 when you should be up 100,000 doing a trade like this. Now, let's say the market has another huge year. Let's say the market's up. Say the market doubles next year. I mean, just for fun. Let's see how much you'd leave on the table. Boy, that'd piss you off if you did this. And the market doubled, but maybe not, because you could sleep at night. It's almost like free money. All right, yeah, the market doubles. Your $1 million account ought to be worth $2 million, but it's worth $475. You get about 47% of the upside with this trade. Anyway, this is a great trade. This is with SPY options. And it's a great trade. So I'm going to show an alternative for it. Okay, so let's talk about what can go wrong on that trade. Okay, if the market crashes, and I showed you the most you can lose is just a little bit of money. The puts that you bought, if the market crashes, those puts are worth a lot of money, and you bought them, so that's good. You sold the calls in the market crash, so those are all 100% profit, and you still own the stock. Now, you have a big paper loss in the stock, but the money from the puts offset the paper loss, and I showed that to you. No matter how much the market drops, you could only lose 9,000. Okay, if the market goes nowhere at all, you're going to lose all the money on the puts, okay? But you're going to make all the money on the short calls. And your stock's still worth the same thing that it was a year ago. And this trade was put on for a slight credit, so you just get to keep the credit. So nothing really happens. The market doesn't go anywhere. Now, let's say if the market goes up 10%, you only make about 4.7%. Okay, so that's the downside of it. Okay, now here's one other thing to consider when you do it with SPY options. SPY options can be exercised, and you can get assigned early. You don't have to wait till the last day. When you sell an option to somebody, that call that you sold to somebody, that's somebody betting the market will go up, and you're taking their bet. So the market does go up, they're going to come and want their money back. And the way they get their money back is they'll exercise their option, and your shares will get assigned to them at the strike price. So if the market's up higher than the strike price, they'll get your shares at the strike price, and then they can turn around and sell them, keep them, do whatever they want. That's what happens with SPY options, and that's fine. And And that's fine. And a lot of people are comfortable with that. And you can, my friend was actually talking about doing this in a tax-free account. So he's fine. If the stock gets assigned, it's fine. He'll just take the cash and buy some more stock. He'll just replace the stock. But anyway, it's something to think about. It's something to think about. You have the chance of, you could wake up one morning and they could say, oh, you've sold 900 shares of stock. It's not a bad problem to have, though, because then you're going to have the money in your account. But so this means if you don't buy the SPY shares back, though, you no longer have 1,700 shares of SPY. You have 800. So this is what can go wrong. Okay. This strategy is great for people with cash in the bank. You have $1 million account and a couple $100,000 in the bank or whatever. You're fine. If this happens to you and you don't want to lose your SPY shares, you can just cover the options. You can try, there's strategies to try to avoid assignment, or if you get assigned, you can just buy the shares back, even if it's at a small loss. Sometimes it makes more sense not to lose your SPY shares, but if you don't have the cash and to be able to get them back, you don't have that option. So this way is probably better for somebody with cash in the bank. I'm going to show you a set it and forget it method for somebody that maybe doesn't have 100 grand in the bank, but wants to do the same trade. My friend's trade is good. This next one is the same trade with the little variation. So what I want to do is switch it out to SPX options, which are index options based on the S&P 500. The SPY is an ETF that contains the S&P 500 stocks, physically contains the stocks. So that's a physical index, and the SPY, because they own the stock, they pay a small dividend. Those stocks pay a dividend. Well, the SPX is just a calculation on a piece of paper. It's just an index, so there's no dividend. However, the SPX and SPY are pretty much, 99.9% correlated. So a lot of brokers will let you sell SPX options as long as you have enough SPY or IVV in the account to make the option covered. In other words, they'll let you use SPY for the underlying on SPX, and this is the greatest thing ever. This is great. I love this method. I did this a bunch in 2021 when I was afraid the market was going to crash. I had a caller on in late 2021 with SPX options over SPY shares. All right, so on SPX, the first thing is there's no early assignment. There's no assignment. It's cash settled. So you never have to worry about losing your shares. When you get to, if you've sold an option that's in the money on expiration day, it's settled in cash. You owe cash, okay? So they won't let you make the trade unless you have shares or cash. All right. But they have to know you're good for it. But if you do not come up with cash, your broker will just sell the SPY shares. So effectively, you're writing a covered call on the SPY, or you're synthetically selling some of your shares. All right. Well, the other thing is these SPX options have a favorable 60-40 tax treatment dealing with long-term or short-term gains. And that makes a difference. It may not sound like it, but that makes a difference. Also, the transaction costs are lower on SPX options. SPX options have a bigger notional value, so you need to sell less of them to cover X amount of SPY shares. So to the extent that there is commission, and to the extent there is fees and stuff, it's lower with SPX than it is with SPY. But there's nothing wrong with doing it the SPY way also. All right, so here's my way. Okay, the reason the graph looks different is because OptionStrat cannot simulate the stock position. So this is just the overlay. Okay, so we're going to go back, look at my friends. See, it's the same thing. He bought 17 585 puts. He sold 9 585 calls. Okay, these options are 10 times as big. So you could do 2 and 1, and it's the same as 20 and 10 on the other. Okay, so we're going to buy 2 puts, sell 1 call. And we're using the 5,900 strike. He used the 50 the 5850 essentially. Use the 585. You can multiply SPY by 10 to get the SPX price, and it's close. It's not exact because of the difference in the dividend, but these are essentially very close trades. Okay, well, the reason I like, well, it's not that this one's better or anything, but this one, you have $1 million portfolio. The market drops. Like I say, it doesn't put the portfolio calculation on the overlay, so we have to figure it out. But if the market drops 20%, your $1 million portfolio is down. And this is a little bit more. This is a $1.1 million portfolio. So you're down about 220,000 or something. Okay. This option position is up 220,000. This option position, it goes out till January of 26. So it expires a month later than the last one. I didn't see that. But anyway, it covers you till January 26. If you have there's any type of crash in the market under the 5,900 SPX level, we go to 5,800, you're covered. If we go to 5,700, if we go to 4,000, go to wherever, you're covered. Doesn't matter if the market goes to zero, because at the end of at expiration in January, this trade will be, this trade to be worth $1.1 million. So you now have your SPY shares will be worthless, but you'd have $1.1 million in cash. So the opposite is if the market goes up. So let's say the market goes up 10%, just to make the math easy, right? This is $1.1 million. You should be up about 110,000 or so. Well, anyway, you're up 61,000. You're catching, or I'm sorry, no, your option trade is actually down 61,000. Okay, but your stock is up 100,000. So you're actually up 39,000. Just like the other one, you're only getting a portion of the upside. And in the case of this one, you're getting about 45% of the upside. In the case of the other one, it was 47%. Say if the market is up 20% next year, just to make the math easy, that this option position, you're going to owe 120,000 on at the end of the term. Well, when it expires, but at the markets, your $1.1 million up, portfolio's up 20%. That's what 2.1 or something like that. So your portfolio should be up 210,000. So even after you settle this option trade, you're still ahead 110,000. So when you should have been up 200,000, you caught about 100,000. You're catching about half the upside with that. And that's because of the 2-to-1 ratio. I mean, that would make sense because we're only selling one call for every 2 puts we buy. Okay. So we have more protection on the downside than we haven't totally sold our upside future away. All right, so let's exclude the calls. We could just buy the 2 puts. It would cost us $52,000, but it will last a year and it would do the same thing. All right. I mean, it's chance of profit's 37%. If the market goes up and has a good year, we're going to lose $52,000. Now our stock will, our SPY portfolio will be doing well, but we're going to lose. We know we're going to lose $52,000. If the market goes nowhere, we're going to lose $52,000. So when we do it, Max's method, the market goes nowhere, we break even. The market goes up. The market goes up 10%. We lose 61,000 on the option trade, but we make 100,000 in the stock market. So we're up $39,000. All right. This is same or a similar thing that ETFs like TJUL do. I've come on and I've had a show on TJUL. It's an ETF that if you hold it 2 years, guarantees zero loss, not even the $9,000 like my friends trade, zero loss. Now they charge a management fee. But you could essentially do this if you have $1 million worth of SPY. You could do the trade I suggested or the trade my friend suggested, or you could come up with one of your own, talk to your own financial planner, hit me. So the cost of this trade is the upside. Like I say, you get 4 parts instead of 10. Market's up 10, you get 4 basically. It's 40%. That'd be like the buffer. I mean, you see this on covered call funds all the time where the covered call fund gets about 40% of the buffer. This is the same theory. This is because this is a covered call strategy, right? It's the same thing. So this isn't free money because you still have to get the direction of the market right. You still have to know the market's going to go up. Now, it's great that you don't lose when you're wrong, but you know, it's not really free money because you still have to get the direction right to make the profit. You could do a reverse version of this if you were bearish on the market and, you know, where you made extra money on the downside, but where you would lose 0 if the market went up. You could do a reverse version, but I like this version. I think the market will probably keep going up next year. Let's just stay hedged, stay cautious. You know, if the market goes up 20% next year and you have a trade like this on, you'll only get 10% of the upside, but that's fine. Then I would put on another trade like this after this one's over in a year. I would just keep this. I would just keep this on. I mean, that's just me. Or get an ETF like T-Jewel where they do this for you. Although not everyone wants to screw around with having a SPX hedge on. And I mean, I get that, but you just get T-Jewel. It's the same thing. So that, yeah, this isn't the only way to do it. If you think the market might crash or you're scared, there's other options. Sell some shares. The first thing is just cut your size down. That's just 101. If the market's been going great, you're up, you know, like in this scenario, my person's up, they don't want to lose millionaire status. Sell 10% of their position. Because if they're right, if this is at top, boom, they've sold the top. Then they can come back in with the cash after the market drops 30% and they can redeploy the cash. So that's the first way to do it. You could also invest in some inverse assets, you know, so you could use YQQQ. If you have a lot of NASDAQ exposure, that's in inverse NASDAQ where it also pays you a dividend or a yield. And also you could do nothing and hope that you're wrong. And this works sometimes too, because lots of times you are wrong. I'm wrong lots of times. Sometimes the best move is absolutely to do nothing. Now you don't know that till after it's done, but sometimes by doing too many things, selling shares, buying options, all this stuff, lots of times you screw yourself over. All right. So this isn't financial advice. Obviously, get your own planner for God's sake, especially if you're looking, you know, if you're doing this with more than $500,000 or $1 million, if you have 4 or 5 higher amounts, get a planner for gosh sake. And, you know, this is important stuff. You don't want to make a 7-figure error by doing something that you didn't think about all the way. And YouTube's great too. Get ideas from YouTube, but then go to a planner. Get you a fee-based financial planner. Go sit down with them and say, hey, you know, I'm thinking about buying these yield max funds, and then I'm thinking about putting this collar thing on my SPY shares. What do you think about that? Anyway, he'd sit down and guys can go through it, and he can make sure that it's what you really want to do, right? I mean, that's just my advice. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you being here. I'm going to share those trades in case you guys want to do them or maybe just study them. Don't forget to get Option Strat. I'm an affiliate. Option Strat's really good. I'll put the trades up, but go play around with those trades and try to figure out how Option Strat work, or Option Strat can help you visualize how risk and options work. And then hit me up in the DMs if you have any questions. I love talking about Option Strat. All right, guys. I appreciate it. Have a good day.